Hello everyone, my name is Kong Shrinani and welcome to my YouTube channel, Neuro Chat with AG. On this channel, I plan to cover topics that are closest to my heart and support the neurodiverse community. Topics related to neurodiversity, autism, late autism diagnosis, and autism in women and girls. I will interview thought leaders, esteemed researchers, scientists, professors, doctors, and psychologists and seek their views and updates on their latest work and research. I will also chat with parents of neurodiverse kids and adults and talk about experiences of neurodiverse individuals. Lastly, keeping inclusivity as a topmost priority. We might also discuss controversial disparate views for a collective understanding of issues and respect for diverse views. All the views and topics discussed are for informational purposes only. If you are interested in watching more quality content on this topic, please hit the subscribe button. Don't forget to press the bell icon to be notified whenever a new video is uploaded. Please also share the channel with your friends, family, and social media platforms. Thank you. Sam Young, MED, is the head of the Young Scholars Academy School. This strength-based, talent-focused virtual enrichment program empowers gifted, twice exceptional, and neurodivergent students to feel seen, nurtured, and happy throughout its strength-based courses, camps, and its building of community. Sam is a two-time Fulbright Scholar, TEDx presenter, keynote speaker, and former Bridges Academy educator of nearly 10 years, and a Bridges Graduate School of Cognitive Diversity alumni. Sam is a neurodivergent who has committed his life to bright, quirky students to overcome the harmful, deficit-based system and discover, develop, and lead strength-based, talent-focused lives. Mr. Young, welcome, and thank you very much for the time today.
Thank you so much, and feel free to call me Sam. My moniker has kind of become Mr. Sam, but obviously you can call me Sam.
Okay, well, I'll go with it. Mr. Sam, could you please share a bit about you and your background and, what led you to get involved in this space?
Yeah, so like most people, you don't kind of trip and fall into this space by accident, right? It's always usually pretty deeply personal. I, like most, struggled from a young age with academics a great deal and was diagnosed with ADHD
Mm-hmm.
in fourth grade. And probably undiagnosed dyslexia. I had some encoding struggles, and back in my age, phonics was all the rage. So we were doing a lot of that kind of phonics
Mm-hmm.
work and so forth. But my father's was dyslexic, so um, and I realized that a great deal of the diagnosis space, the neurodivergent space at the time and still now is often focused on what's wrong, right? It's focused on treating, it's focused on isolating and fixing, and that felt fundamentally to me um, quite rotten, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And over time, I really sort of internalized that and still deal with, like most, the ramifications of thinking, I'm slow, I'm stupid, I can't. And sort of from an early age, I wanted to be an educator. And then as I got older, kind of realized my why, which is really to help people who were like young me, who have a great many strengths, to focus on those strengths, develop those strengths, because giving you a bit of a long-winded answer here, but society is not necessarily aligned with education, and society often focuses on our strengths, the way we show up, the value that we add, whereas education is often focused on fixing the struggles and so forth. So I always wanted to take my personal experience as a neurodivergent individual and help young people to not have the same struggles I did and to develop their talents and strengths so that they can lead strength-based lives.
A little bit more going into you. So could you talk about how your diagnosis, other factors, early intervention, what things do you think have helped you to be successful today?
Yeah, it's a complicated space, right? So I sort of was diagnosed and then kind of kept going back. What I mean by that is I was diagnosed in fourth grade, and then again in high school. I went back in 10th grade to say, is this ADHD? And then I went back again my freshman year of college. And what that really meant in hindsight is number one, wrestling with ways to get support. Number two, not understanding the complexities of some of the other things that were going on that come with ADHD, like anxiety, executive function struggles, and also this undiagnosed dyslexia
Mhm.
that I believe I have. So there was a lot there. In terms of, interventions, I think the most helpful intervention anytime is someone who really cares for you, right, and
Mhm.
believes in you. And for me, that was again, I sort of mentioned this kind of internalizing, feeling stupid and slow and all these things. It always took me 7 to 8 times longer to read, to process. And as a result, I really didn't have much of a social life outside
Mhm.
of school because everything would just take me so long. I don't think teachers a lot of the times know how much a lot of neurodivergent people will have to compensate and overcompensate and work to do tasks. They might have an estimate in their head. This will take, 20 minutes, and it might take 4 hours, for example. So the thing that helped me the most was really people believing in me, and that didn't necessarily help like with symptoms or management or anything like that, but it really helped me to believe in myself. I had an amazing teacher in ninth grade who basically pulled me aside in this English class. I was very like divergent in that I was in like the highest history classes and the lowest math and English classes.
Mhm.
And like many people who have a similar profile, we're strong where we're interested and we struggle in other places. So this teacher pulled me aside and basically said to me, on the first day, like, what are you doing here? I was like, oh man, I'm in trouble. And he's like, you're too smart to be in this class. And it was like the first time in an English class someone ever told me like I should do more and demand more and so forth. So that was huge. Additionally, and it's a complicated, long road, and unfortunately, there's a lot of trial and error, experimenting with different prescriptions, medications, as well as different executive function interventions, understanding how my brain works. And unfortunately, I didn't realize these until I was in graduate school. But things like I need to be in a quiet place alone, facing a wall, listening to kind of euphoric music. I need to not beat myself up about, not being able to concentrate in a study group or with other people around, whatever it might be. So sort of to summarize, I think yeah, having someone who believes in you and gets you and can really motivate you. For me personally, trying different medications.
Mhm.
Number three would be some like the executive strategies I learned when I was older, and the fourth one I do want to talk about quickly. I didn't mention this, but I think it's sort of the alternative path to medicine, or it could be in combination with medicine, which is for me it was really fitness and nutrition. I've learned from really recent years, and I wish I knew this when I was younger, that getting up early, getting a workout in, and eating the right foods can really help my emotional regulation, my attention, and just overall feelings throughout the day. And I think that's probably not talked about enough. It's invaluable for me. I mean, night or day difference.
I know you mentioned that your goal was you kind of came upon this goal of helping people get, supports and, motivating them to help them succeed. So, how did you plan to and, end up pursuing an education career focusing on neurodivergent and twice exceptional students?
So it's an interesting one. I knew from a young age I wanted to be an educator, but I didn't necessarily know, who or how or why. And I think many people sort of, this is a very neurodivergent thing, I think. Many people sort of know what they want to do first, and then like in education, right? Like I'm a historian, so I guess I'll teach. I was the opposite. I was like, I want to help people and so I guess I'll teach history. So I started a career wanting to be a history teacher in about ninth grade or so. I was kind of on that trajectory, and I started going down the path. I wanted to go to a certain school with an education program, and I don't know that I was aware enough that it was like to help people who were differently wired. I just knew I wanted to help, and I loved the idea of sort of bringing people together around big ideas. I always enjoyed great conversation. Um, Part of being dyslexic, I struggled with reading my whole life, and I always learned a great deal from discourse. So I knew I wanted to be an educator. I didn't necessarily know for who. I became in college really emboldened and passionate about civil rights and decided that I was going to predominantly commit myself to helping various cultural, ethnic minorities. Um, and my early years in education were helping students in probation schools, lockup schools, so forth. I did a pedagogical Fulbright scholarship that was an exchange in France, which was really cool because I got to see another system of education and kind of compare it to the American system. And then that kind of set me down a road of like being really interested in talent development and understanding how different brains work. Then I started to reflect more and more, right? I think, as I said before, people don't trip and fall into this field. I developed a great deal of interest in my own brain and started to want to learn more and more and more. And then, as fate would have it, I found this amazing school called Bridges Academy in Los Angeles, and they were the first school to teach twice exceptional students. So I went there, joined the team there, taught for some time. They originally started as just a school, and then they founded a research center and a graduate school. So I sort of climbed up through the ranks through there and realized that I do firmly want to help people who have spent their whole lives focusing on deficits, and who better than a twice exceptional individual who has exceptional strengths and exceptional struggles. Of course, like most, I wasn't aware of that term when I was younger. Many people listening right now might not be aware of that term. So I think it's um, like most things, and I think you'll find this in your life, you end up setting out on one path, and then you end up doing the thing that's kind of the intersection of many things. Right? And that's ultimately what I knew I wanted to be an educator. I knew I wanted to mentor people. I knew I wanted to bring together high level reflection, content, discourse. I knew I wanted to help disenfranchised groups. And then I knew I wanted to be interested in talent development. And then it just so happened that, twice exceptional population was the population that made the most sense to me. And then, of course, working with this population, joining this population, I realized I'm part of this population, which, of course, is a whole other thing in and of itself.
And how do you think your personal experience shaped your approach to supporting students in similar situations? Like, what, what do you do now, or, would like to do that kind of stem from your own experience?
Yeah, so I liked being an educator. I liked being in the classroom, and I liked bringing, again, all the things that we just mentioned. I mentioned, content and discourse and so forth, dialogue, debate. I really enjoyed that, and I found myself wanting more. I wanted to affect bigger change than the 10 or so kids who were in my class, and I was realizing that many of the programs out there, when I talk about my experience, were not necessarily doing the things that I thought were relevant. And I had this thought, which was most of my great learning didn't happen until college. It wasn't until I was in university that I really got to go into areas I was interested in. I got to go deep. I got to kind of ignore some of the stuff that I struggled with and sort of find my people. And I kind of looked around and I saw like these really quirky individuals like myself who were really doing quite well in certain classes and struggling in others. And then I thought, what if we did this for like really young kids? Right? What if we took the stuff that people are interested in? Because again, interest is the great differentiator when you're talking about differently wired minds. The same person who can't pay attention, quote unquote, all of a sudden can't stop focusing on something that they're interested in. The person doesn't change, the interest does, right? So when my kind of busy brain got to work, I thought, what if we could give college level courses to like bright, quirky younger kids and help them explore the things that they're interested in? Because most of the time, and I found this in my life, a lot of the times neurodivergent people get held back because of their struggles. They might be supremely interested or talented in one area. Let's say you have a young aspiring artist or entrepreneur, and because they're behind in math, they get pulled out of their electives or enrichment courses. And it made so much sense to me that we need to do the opposite. That was sort of to me like taking away someone's oxygen and telling them they can make up for it later, right? Like you can't hold your breath and make up for it later. You cannot starve yourself and eat later, right? So I had this kind of aha moment, this sort of fire inside, which was, what if we did high level enrichment for bright kids as young as 5, an hour a day, and start now? And that idea is sort of what blossomed into me leaving the education program that I was in, leaving the schools and starting my own. So, I get to answer your question, sort of a desire to think about what I was seeing around me in universities, thinking about this misalignment of what people are looking for in society, right? As a society, we want like supremely talented people who are really good at a few things, right? But education kept focusing on what kids were bad at, and it kept holding them back, myself included, in certain areas I was really interested in or could have pursued. And I realized I realized this at several stages in my life, by the way. I almost dropped out of my education program when I was in college because I had so much negative self-talk. I was like, I'm too stupid to be a history teacher. I'm not good enough reader. I can't keep up. I won't be able to do it. And I had this amazing mentor take me aside, and he said, you may struggle with reading and you may not know all the facts, But what you can't teach is how to be a teacher. And he's like, you're a natural teacher. You can learn history. And this guy, Mr. Buxton, believed in me in such a way that I thought, my goodness, imagine if I had that when I was 5, right? Imagine if young people had that when they were 5. They could tell just kind of shut out the world and focus on the thing you're really good at because you have a gift. Imagine the exponential difference that would have made in my personal life, right? Or in your life, or in anyone's life, right? Being told that you're really great, that you have superpowers, that you're super strong, and asking bigger questions and probing and developing talents and interests. So it just became so clear to me that from my personal experience as an individual, my personal experience with people around me, and my professional understanding of the misalignment between like what society is looking for and what schools are doing, that I had to do something. And so I quit my job and started a enrichment village.
To get even deeper into that, so you're you're advocating for this strength-based approach to education. So could you talk a little bit more about like, how it differs from the traditional deficit-based system and like the core values and goals you want to instill?
Yes, and let me do that. And I want to actually go back because I realized I pointed out that some people might not know what twice exceptional is, and then I did not define it. So I want to just explain that. And for people who are visual, the idea behind twice exceptional sort of challenges a fundamental understanding that we have. If you picture like a bell curve, we typically think of someone being on one end or the other, right? There may be 2 or 3 standard deviations over in terms of their strengths, or maybe they're 2 or 3 standard deviations over in terms of their struggles. This could be, gifted, highly artistic, creative, or learning difference, slow processor, ADHD, dyslexia, auditory processing, etc. Twice exceptional is a unique term because it basically suggests that both of those can exist simultaneously. We can have someone who has, and here's where the name comes in, exceptional strengths and exceptional struggles. And those can exist all at the same time. And our logo here, you can see the green, the blue, and the yellow are meant to represent that profile. So the yellow is the unique strengths that a student has. The blue represents our struggle areas, and then the green is the whole person. It's the combination of the two. So if you think of someone, for example, like a Greta Thunberg or a Simone Biles, right? This is someone who's simultaneously incredibly strong, bright, brilliant, talented, and at the same time has a learning difference that brings upon its own unique struggles. And so it's that co-occurrence of the two. So I wanted to just answer that before I answer your question because I think that definitions are important.
Mhm.
Um, your question was sort of the leading to the strength based versus deficit based. And there was a moment when I was in graduate school that I read this quote from Dr. Joseph Renzulli, and it forever changed my life. It was really kind of the spark, I suppose, that lit the powder keg off to get me to leave and go do my own thing. And the quote was Dr. Joseph Renzulli was the mentor to my mentor, Dr. Susan Baum. So he's kind of one of the first people in modern gifted ed to really redefine giftedness. And he said, no one cares about Picasso's ability to do complex math or Einstein's ability to paint. So why are we obsessed with kids being good at everything? And I want to repeat that again. No one cares about Picasso's ability to do complex math or Einstein's ability to paint. So why are we so obsessed with kids being good at everything? And that just blew me away. Right? As a society, we want, plumbers, uh, media specialists, doctors, artists, right? We don't need those people to be supremely well-rounded. I don't know about you, but I don't really care how good my plumber is at poetry or the person writing the New York Times is at plumbing, right? These are people who we celebrate because they have a unique talent that serves them well and serves our collective community. So why is education focused on all the things that you're bad at and getting you better? Right? It doesn't make any sense. And to put it even more in kind of a ludicrous lens, I thought about Superman. I liked comics growing up. Of course, I had difficulty reading, so comics were an attractive option. Lots of pictures. The idea that, Superman has like one deficit, right? He's got a kryptonite allergy, right? A weakness. And then he has all these superpowers. And I thought, this is like the equivalent of like Superman spending his whole life trying to get over his kryptonite allergy. right? Not standing up to evil people, not saving the day, focusing on one thing that's wrong rather than 99 things that are right. And the sad thing is, and I do it to myself, but we do this every day. Neurodivergent people, autistic, ADHD, dyslexic, dysgraphic, auditory processing, whoever you are, if you're listening right now, I would just ask that you focus on your strengths, focus on developing your strengths and your talents, because at the end of the day, no one cares about Picasso's ability to do complex math or Einstein's ability to paint. And if it makes so much sense there, then I hope that can give you some perspective and feeling to develop your talents and your strengths. Because school has done the opposite and has probably done some damage.
To go even further into this, into the changes you want to see, um, in your challenging of the traditional education system, what do you think is the most urgent shift that needs to happen in schools to support neurodivergent students more effectively?
Yeah, and let me qualify. I mean, it's easy for anyone to point the finger. I worked in schools for over a decade. It's easy to say the system. There are a lot of really well-intended and fantastic educators out there. I mean, I've already shared two teachers who changed my life. They are there. They are amazing. If you are one of those people listening right now, thank you. It's easy to make the system a scapegoat. That being said, the system is flawed because it fundamentally looks at deficits. So if I were to give you a short, quick fix, it's choice, right? We need to do two things. We need to empower our kids with more choice because, again, choice is the great differentiator. The kid who can't focus and it seems lazy and then can't stop focusing and is stuck is like going deep with complexity. The only difference is that they care, right? So if you can get more options for choice, more inroads, and we need to all become differentiation yogis. And what do I mean by that? I mean that we need to become more flexible. We need to let go of the how, right? So many educators, and myself included, get really stuck or got really stuck in how kids do the work, right? We were controlling the process. And I think what's really important and the lens of backward design, understanding by design, helps us see that if you focus on where you want students to end, what are the big ideas, the essential questions, and then we let go necessarily of how they get there, we can create different pathways. Maybe instead of writing a report that everybody has to do, we ask, well, what's the essential understanding? Well, if it's understanding the role of women in the United Kingdom in World War One, then can't students make a podcast or do something, costume design, fashion? Maybe they can make a diorama, a model, whatever it might be, right? We need to let go of how things come to pass and give up some control and then give our kids more choice so that they're choosing the interest areas, the ways that they want to go deep. And because I share this, I always think back to my childhood. Right? What are the things I remember? Probably not the papers. It's the times I got to choose a topic and go deep. Like I'm going to make a diorama on the Komodo dragon. I still remember that, right? That is an opportunity for like real interest exploration. And I remember it because I cared, I chose it, and I got to spend weeks and weeks and weeks on it. So if we can find more of that and then let go of the how it comes to pass, again, still focus on the big ideas and the essential questions, and we can still determine what kind of evidence will be acceptable for it. But we just let go a little bit and allow for more entry points, more choice, more opportunities for success, and more interest.
What do you think, outside of, something you mentioned, like another key challenge you think a lot of neurodivergent students face in mainstream education and how Young Scholars Academy addresses those challenges?
I think at the end of the day, it's really just feelings, right? It's that many people feel bad, feel dumb, feel slow because schools are interested in test scores a lot of the times, right? And so they want to focus on what's not going well and get it up because there's so much pressure on, funding and standardized testing and getting into colleges and so forth. So I think one of the biggest challenges is that internalization of like all those things. And one of the greatest things that I think we can do in the short term, and then I'll talk more about Young Scholars Academy, is helping students understand that there is a difference between your self-worth, your intelligence, and your ability, let's say, and your, on the other side here, your executive function skills, right? Your ability to do, turn in work, etc. Because I, like many others, did not understand the two. I attached the two. I thought that I am stupid because I can't get things done, or because I take so long, or because I struggle to process, or because I cannot read this in the way it's delivered to me. So, not understanding that difference between, knowledge, doing, awareness, excuse me, knowledge and awareness and intelligence and doing skills is a key issue because kids feel dumb, they internalize that, and then they spiral. They have the low self-worth, they don't put themselves out there, they don't form healthy attachments and relationships. So that's huge, right? Human beings are social creatures before intellectual ones, right? We need to fit in. If you look at, Maslow's work, anyone, we know that we need to be accepted, we need to fit in, we need to feel safe, we need to feel seen, and then we can open up for learning. And neuroscience proves this, right? Like we look at our emotional brain, it can shut down our intellectual brain, right? It can shut down our prefrontal cortex, our frontal lobe. So our emotional, amygdala, the almond-sized cockpit to your brain, can hijack the whole plane and turn it off, right? So we need to make sure that our students feel connected, feel safe, feel seen, and understand again, there's a difference between knowing and doing. And additionally, the thing that we're doing, because you asked like, what's Young Scholars Academy doing? My dream was just hour a day belonging, enrichment, strength development, and mentoring, right? I firmly believe that when students have even just an hour a day, they can come together, they can explore, and they can develop their interests. And most of our kids are struggling socially. If you have these asynchronous kids, have you ever heard of the rule? There's a rule, not a rule, but it's called the rule. It's the 10-15-5 rule. It's that you can have an individual who is 10 years chronologically, 15 intellectually, and 5 emotionally. Right? So you can have this kind of scatter plot of a kid. They're 10 years in a 10-year-old body. They have this 15-year-old brain, and then these 5-year-old emotions, right? You have this kid who's, knows everything there is to know about World War I trains and then cries when they drop their ice cream, right? It's a complex profile. And to help these students, the research is so clear that they need each other, right? These students often struggle with neurotypical kids, so they don't make friends. Why? Because they have these really unique interests and they want to talk a lot about them and they're bored by people who don't. And that can be difficult. So my dream was and is if these kids can come together and take basically like college level electives in their interest area, they're naturally going to have the other kids with similar interests in there and they become friends, right? How many other kids are, obsessing over whatever my example of World War I trains? They have a natural interest, and then also mentors. There are adults who are like them, but grown up individuals like yourself, myself, who can talk to these kids and say, hey, I've been there. I get it. It can be tough. Let's explore this interest area that you have. Let's allow you to shine, be bright, be an expert here. And that kind of confidence, we call it the 3 C's. The first C is we have our caring mentors, the adults that help and see these kids. Number two, we have the community of like-minded peers. And then number three, we have the content that the kids really care about. So I found that if kids can just have that once a day, ideally more, but at least just once a day, it can be revolutionary. And I'll just share a 30-second thought here. We had a mom our first year, almost 5 years ago, and she said, my son experiences the YSA glow. And I said, what does that mean? She said, when he takes the Young Scholars Academy class, he's euphoric for 24 hours. And this isn't special to here. I mean, this is happening all over the world, I'm sure. But the idea is that he's feeling good. He's with people who like the same memes and silly jokes. He's with adults who care about what he cares about and care about him. And he's in a place where he feels like he can share and add to the class. And that feeling saves lives and changes lives.
And if somebody wants to, or if somebody's parents want to get their children involved with the Young Scholars Academy, um, how do they do that, and what programs are being offered?
Yeah, so that's a good question. We have uh, sort of several tracks running, but if you picture the entire year, we're running classes more or less like 46 weeks a year. So essentially, there's classes running 1 hour a week, all fall, all spring, all summer. So we kind of have these 3 semesters. And families can hop in. We have semesters that start. So, for example, we're just starting our spring semester right now. And families can go check out new classes. If listening to this later, we also have prorated courses that are enrolling all the time. So these are like episodic classes where, for example, in a STEM class. We might look at a different part of science each week, and it might not necessarily be linear. So a family could come in and join that at any time versus AP music theory or calculus class where they're going to need to get the skills and they can't enroll late. So there's once a week courses that run almost all year. And then there's Monday through Friday summer camps during the summer. And everything that we do is 100% virtual with the goal to bring our families together from all over the world. Because again, so many families are isolated, struggling with friendships and connections. We have about 3 open houses a year. And we just had one recently. And on there, we had a video from a student from Switzerland and another student tuning in from Peru, as well as some students from the United States. So here you have these kids. They're the only person like them that they know of in their country and they're tuning into these classes from with kids from all over the world, and it's the only part of the day where they feel like I'm normal. We have a girl who recently bragged about being autistic in one of the classes, and she was so excited. She's like, "Wait," because she heard someone else was autistic. She's, "Wait, you're autistic? I'm autistic. Raise your hand if you're autistic." 5 of the 6 kids in this small little class are autistic, and they were bragging about it and connecting about it. The same girl got like bullied outside and had to homeschool because of being autistic in the way that she presented and so forth. So it's a place where whether it's an hour a week courses or Monday through Friday summer camps, we offer the content and the care and the community. And one other thing that I think is not always evident to folks is that when you enroll in any 2 classes, any 2 courses, we also have a social club that students and parents can join. So, and we give that to you at no extra cost. So, just like a brick and mortar school has a homeroom, we believe that if kids are together in content areas, let's say Dungeons and Dragons and Rubik's cubing, they also need like a home base. So we have a home base. It's called Homeroom Social Club, where the kids can take turns playing icebreakers and sharing their interests and connecting with other peers. So that has been a key kind of backbone for our students, and we have one for parents as well. And we bring in all these. We were talking before recording today about the amazing Dr. Temple Grandin, who was just named the Woman of the Year. I forget what organization, ICA, I think. And she came and spoke to our families. We have experts coming every 2 weeks, talking to our families and helping them with whatever it might be that they're interested in: PDA, executive function, screen time, tech concerns, whatever seems to be the issue or the questions or the concerns that our families have. So the whole idea is being a virtual village, helping kids go deep in content areas, make friends, and belong, and helping parents do the same.
In your TEDx talk, you discussed this importance of embracing the strengths of neurodivergent students. So, could you share a key takeaway from your talk that you hope resonates with both educators and parents?
Yeah, I've actually done that a bit. By my Superman punchline was my big takeaway. But the idea uh, that no one really cares about what you're bad at, right? And a big part of that is that we don't get to judge or choose or pick our powers, right? In the TEDx talk, I make the reference to Professor Xavier and X-Men, right? And Professor Xavier created this school. It was called the Professor Xavier School for Gifted Youngsters. And essentially what he's doing is 2 things. Number one, he's creating a safe space for quote unquote mutants, as they're called in X-Men, to develop their superpowers and become superheroes. And number two, he's creating a space that protects them from the outside world. The importance is that we don't get to choose our powers and we don't get to necessarily judge one's powers. As parents, it's often easy, or as professionals, it's easy for us to like have certain ideals or values. Yeah, that's cool, but we need to work on history. Or, okay, yeah, great. I know you want the YouTube stuff, but let's work on our math homework. And I get that and I want to validate that. At the same time, our kids have these unique talents, these above average abilities, these heightened interests and sensitivities. And they don't get to choose them. We don't get to choose them, but we can choose how we help. We can help them develop. We can help them go deep because, and this is a big sinker here for some folks, but what our kids are doing now, what our kids are interested in now might be more aligned with society in the future than our understanding of what society is going to look like. Your child who might be forgetting to do their math homework because they're so deep in creating content on YouTube, let's say, might blow up into being a gold or platinum level YouTuber who offers this amazing content at such high value to people at no cost and changes people's lives every day. Um, to make it even more kind of silly in my TED talk, I said, imagine the audacity of some teacher at some point who told George Lucas to stop doodling in class and put his drawings away and focus on his timetables, right? Because I'd read once that George Lucas in third or fourth grade was creating most of his characters during his classes, and I thought, like, here's someone who literally changed popular culture. And unified the world through things like Star Wars and Indiana Jones, so forth. And you know, what were the times tables in context to that? So we have to kind of let go of what we think kids ought to do or should do and be detectives, not judges. What are they interested in? What are they curious in? Can we ask questions instead of condemning? And can we get curious? And then can we provide opportunities for them to go deep, wherever it is, without judgment?
What do you think, therein, like you said, like, with teachers or parents, like, this kind of, we need to focus on this area. So, like, what do you think the most common misconception about neurodivergent students that, teachers, administrations, like you said, the educational system, they're not trying to make it, disadvantaged for neurodivergent students, but it has turned out that way. So, what do you think, I guess, like the underlying causes are, and how can that be addressed?
Yeah, that's a big one. Again, underlying causes, I think education is so wide, right? If you're going to a small magnet school or a private school, it's very different from a big public school. I think in general, there's a tremendous amount of trickle-down pressure to do well on assessments, right? And we're all anxious. We're all trying to help. Everyone's approaching this from a good place. They want to help kids do well in the future. And it feels like there's non-negotiables, right? Like kids have to turn work in, they need to know basic math, and they need to learn how to read and write. And I don't disagree with those ideas, right? There are some non-negotiables, and we have to be careful how we define them. But yeah, we do want to, systemically help our kids to achieve. My critique and concern is that we're doing anything but that, right? That we're a lot of the times making, well-rounded individuals, quote unquote. And I don't know that that's necessarily it. Like, yeah, it's important to be well-rounded to some extent. Again, knowing foreign languages, knowing basic arithmetic, how to read and write. These things are all very important and certainly have their place. That being said, what serves us well, I think of switching from a painting metaphor to a mosaic metaphor, right? Painting to me is well-rounded. It's like you get all these skills and you glue them together and then make a single color. Whereas a mosaic is you're having these unique pieces that are part of like a collective artwork. I think that school tries to make painters. It tries to get everyone who's like generally good at some things. And where does this come from? Well, in the United States, school education system was created to help people get ready for factories, right? It was created by the Tayloristic revolution, scientific management. Listen to an authority figure, punch in, punch out on the clock, rotating bell schedule, lunch pail, the whole thing. Education hasn't necessarily kept up because we're not in an industrial era anymore. So just having people be well-rounded so they can go work on a floor in a factory or so they can, get into a school and then having, colleges and universities really like put the final touch on the education. I think that's a shame. I think we need to let go of that. We need to let go of a lot of these like non-negotiables, and we need to help students develop their individual identities at a young age. Ask them big philosophical questions. Have them do things that really matter and are authentic, right? Instead of writing a paper, maybe they're making a website, doing something that they actually care about, getting some real world experience, right? These things are invaluable because then what we're doing is we're just pumping these kids into these systems that cut their edges off, round them out, and then put them into another system that just puts them in debt and they don't have any experience, so they can't get any experience. And the cycle continues. Bright, quirky, neurodivergent individuals have unique interests and talents and strengths. And if they can get early experience in developing those talents and strengths, and they can have exposure and they can get internships and opportunities to go, apply themselves at a young age, they will inevitably become the experts and so forth. And I think about this a lot, even though COVID feels like it's mostly in our rearview mirror, during the pandemic, we were looking to people like there was some guy, his name escapes me. He wrote the New York Times best-selling book on, the Spanish flu during World War One, right? Like here's someone who just like buried his head into the sand, went so deep into an area he's interested in. And then when there's this giant viral outbreak, He's like the foremost expert on this thing, right? This is the guy. He's not well-rounded. He spent his whole life studying the Spanish flu, and we're listening to him. We're curious about what he has to say. What kind of insight can he provide? This is what we need to do, right? Again, the system is making people well-rounded. And I know this is controversial, but I say that our kids are square pegs, and instead of trying to stuff them in round holes, we need to sharpen their edges so they can lead with their edges, they can contribute with their edges, and they can lead meaningful lives.
And one thing I want to ask you is for a success story. So could you share a success story from Young Scholars Academy that kind of exemplifies the impact of, a strength-based approach and what a big change it can result in?
I'm going to read you. I actually didn't prepare this, but I mentioned to you before we started recording, I went to an event. I was keynoting an event this past weekend, and I got a card from a student. One of our students was there. Actually, about five of our families came in person to meet me, and this made me cry. I'm going to read it to you because I think that I could summarize, hundreds of stories, but I'd rather tell you just one. So, dear Mr. Sam, thank you for creating this amazing community. YSA lifted me up when I was stuck and has taught me so much. Most importantly, being the knowledge that being worth, most importantly, the knowledge that being me is worth some people not liking me. I'm so happy that I've found my people at YSA. I've made so many friends and awesome memories, even though you're not teaching, because I'm not teaching. I will be constantly emailing you and inviting you to our production of The Wizard of Oz. You bring so much light into my life. I'm so, so grateful that you started this incredible community that has changed my life immensely. This is my favorite part. YSA makes me feel proud of my square pegness rather than ashamed. You are awesome and incredible. Lots of love. And then the student's name. And I just got goosebumps reading that. And I cried when she shared it with me. This idea that this young 11-year-old girl is having this experience, she says, I was stuck. You lifted me up when I was stuck. And I'm so happy I found my people and that I can be myself, even if it means other people not liking me. Like that is what we're trying to do. We're trying to help these kids feel good about themselves, find their people, and realize that they don't need to change. They just need to be in a different environment. And we have 400 families like this right now. As I mentioned, five of them came, and it was such a pleasure to moms who I'd never met in person, but I've been emailing for 5 years, just hugged me crying, and they were talking about, what being in theater has done for their kid, or Dungeons and Dragons, and how their child is so much better at like listening and wait time, or the executive function skills their child's built, or the confidence they've built from publishing their website and advocacy class, and the list goes on, right? Again, we don't necessarily know how these things are going to play out and what effect they're going to have, but we know that we need to give these kids these opportunities every day because you can only feel bad for so long before you start to have really big consequences and internalized ramifications from that.
That's amazing. That's a really heartfelt note. And, you know, you talking about how a lot of people are kind of struggling with this navigating the traditional education system. And, it's not just I see you getting that back from the community that the method that you've implemented is helping a lot. So, the last thing I really wanted to ask is about self-advocacy and, what role do you think that plays in the lives of neurodivergent students and how do you encourage it at Young Scholars Academy?
Yeah, and let me just say a quick thought, and then I'm going to answer your question. When I was first starting, I had to ask myself, do I want to create an enrichment community or do I want to create a school? And the reason I chose an enrichment community is because I think that the system is so big and can feel so overwhelming. And I'm, as many ADHD folks, I'm very impatient, and I wanted to give something that could help now. Right? Yes, I could create a whole school and we could eventually try to get a small number of people to join our school, or I could give hundreds of people, thousands of people, an hour a day to feel good. And so, yes, the system is big. It is bureaucratic. It moves slow. It can feel like Sisyphus, like a Sisyphusian feat of pushing that boulder up the hill each day. And if we can find little lights in our lives each day, that can make a huge difference. Doesn't matter where it is. Number two, the the question that you asked, well, I want to say one more thing, sorry, really quickly, is just that it doesn't necessarily have to be in any one community. Like, and this is where I ask parents to be detectives. right? Be curious. If your child is gaming a lot or doing something, odds are they're probably getting certain needs met in that space. Maybe they're really important and they've started a server, or they're, leading people, or they play a defined role in Dungeons and Dragons or Roblox or Minecraft, whatever it might be. These spaces, we were talking about, a lot of gaming before. These spaces are outlets for our children to meet their needs. And yes, they are addictive, and yes, we should be cautious. And we should also be curious and ask, what are they getting there, and where else might they get it? Okay. So I went on a bit of a tangent there and I forgot your question. I'm sorry. Oh, self-advocacy. Okay. So one thing that we do is we have an actual advocacy class. I'm a huge tenant for advocacy. Our kids are big empaths, right? These kids have big feelings. They are empathetic. They are aware. What do you do with someone who's so young and aware of climate change, right? They need an outlet. These students are aware of LGBTQ rights and, disenfranchisement of people of color and social inequality. These kids need a space. So we give them deliberate courses that help them, and we give them courses that maybe help them as well, but don't seem so deliberate, like a speech and debate, improv theater class that's going to help students, or creative writing. It's going to help students articulate themselves better so that when the time comes, they can advocate. And kind of more big picture, the advocacy is everything, right? Helping people understand. You gave an example before of the fantastic work that you're doing of going into different police departments and helping them understand what neurodiversity looks like and how it can manifest in individuals so that the police force better understands and can support rather than punish. Um, that is especially important for our children to be able to take that message, because at the end of the day, we have neurodivergent kids who are living in a world that wasn't necessarily designed for them or by them, people like them, and having the ability to explain who they are, explain how their brain functions, but not do it in a way where they're putting themselves down and thinking they're stupid, but just very matter of factly, is so very important. And that doesn't happen just by learning, it happens by modeling, right? If a kid can say, "Sorry, Mr. Sam, I spaced out for a moment. I have a hard time with auditory processing. Can you write it down for me?" Like, wow, that level of metacognition is everything. It's quick, it's not apologetic necessarily. It's just owning it, right? "I'm sorry, can you speak up, or can you slow down? Can you write it down? Can I see it on the board? Can we put it in different colors? That helps me." That level of self-awareness. We also have executive function classes, which are supremely helpful as well. Again, helping the kids understand, just like I said in the very beginning, understanding the difference between knowing, ability, intelligence, and doing, executive function skills, task management, etc. And when they can understand how their brain works, and when they can communicate that to others effectively, so they can be successful, and that people can not just accommodate, but enable them to be successful, that's everything. The self-awareness, the voice, and the tools. It's in every class. It's in every part of our community. And again, it doesn't matter where you get it. I'm not here to push Young Scholars Academy. As long as our kids are getting spaces where they can advocate, where they can talk about the causes they care about, where they can go deep, they can get mentoring, they can explore the content, and they can find healthy ways to discuss. Last example, we have a class called Adulting and Thriving. It's for seniors getting ready for college or a gap year. And in that program, the kids are reading How to Win Friends and Influence People, the famous 1930s Dale Carnegie book that was written to help salespeople succeed in the face of the Great Depression. Why? Because for a lot of our kiddos, some of these tips and tricks are not necessarily intuitive, but learning them very concretely can help them to be able to better communicate themselves, more effectively listen, and better articulate so that people can understand, accommodate, and help. So advocacy permeates through everything that we do here, and it needs to be a huge focus for our kids because they need to feel good, they need to learn the stuff they care about, they need to make friends, and they need to learn how to use their voice because it's the most powerful tool that they have, and they're going to need it.
Thank you so much for this wonderful conversation and congratulations on all the amazing success. I look forward to hearing more from you, Mr. Sam, and thank you very much.
Thank you for having me, and kudos to you again. I said this right before we started recording, and I'll say it again. You creating this space and doing so at such a young age, I hope that doesn't offend you, is incredibly impressive. And the fact that you care about something so deeply that you are in fact advocating about it, right? You are doing everything that we just talked about. You're creating a space, you're showing up consistently, you're yelling into the darkness and helping people. And that is such a rare and special thing to do with one's life. So I appreciate that, and I'm honored to be on your show.